Well, Jake, it's happening. As we're sitting here right now, the helicopters are flying overhead. People are tracking airplanes. Everybody's watching every movement of Josh Hurd, Kenny Payne, the Louisville administration, and everybody associated with Louisville basketball because as of today, March 13th, 2024, the pain has ended. It's a beautiful day outside. The sun is shining. I'm enjoying taking in these March rays. A bit sad that the season's over, even though it sucked. But it's a bit sad that it's over. Kind of introspective now, looking at what could be next, but also super excited because a new era begins now. The coaching search begins now. Jake Cook, as always, on the other side of the screen. Jake, what's the temperature of things down there in Bowling Green? How are you feeling? What's going on?
The people Bowling Green. Sorry, I should probably grab a microphone.
Yeah, that helps.
A little bit. It's only like my seventh time doing this. The people Bowling Green not talking about Kenny Payne like I want them to talk about, but that's okay because as this cloud is finally lifting off Louisville, the weather is simultaneously turning amazing. It's like 72 today. It just feels magnificent. This is probably, don't want to stomp on a person's grave, but this is probably the most excited I've been as a Louisville basketball fan since basically Chris Mack got fired. Honestly, since Chris Mack got hired, really, because I mean, it's kind of been, besides his first couple of years there, it's kind of been all downhill. So I mean, it's a good day. It's opening a new chapter. I'm really excited to see where this goes, and it's time for us to be able to dream again. We dreamt a little bit before the season, maybe hoping we could turn this around. He's got his own players. We've got more talent, all this stuff, but that quickly evaporated with losses to Coppin State and whoever the heck else it was in UMBC. So it's nice to be able to be hopeful again.
Yeah, at the moment, people are grabbing Kenny Payne by his hands and his feet and his penis and shouting, and Kenny Payne shouting, what is the charge for eating a succulent Chinese meal? That's exactly what's going on right now. Do you have any idea what the context of that video is?
I have no idea. No, I was very confused. I heard penis and I was my ears perked up.
Yeah, look at the video that I posted on Twitter about an hour ago, and it'll give you a little bit more context. But yeah, they're gonna have to take Kenny Payne out kicking and screaming. And look, thank you, Kenny, for making this as easy as possible. Like we don't have to sit around. I mean, some people are. Like I saw even Crawford was out posting today about saying, defending Kenny Payne. He was a good guy. He didn't have to come back and do this. But I mean, the reality of the situation, Jake, is that he was never cut out for this. And people did try to help him. I don't want to hear that. He went on after the game, in case you haven't heard, in case you've been living under a rock, not paying attention to Louisville basketball, don't know what happened in the presser after Louisville's season finale loss to NC State in the ACC tournament. KP basically just went on a bender and just like tried to take out everybody that helped boost his platform, helped
unloaded
him get where he is. He unloaded the clip, bro. And it just cracks me up because all the stuff that he says is just unequivocally false. Like any notion that there's not NIL there is unequivocally false. Any notion that the administration didn't do everything that they could do to help him is false. I mean, people were trying to help this guy, give him a leg up on the competition, and he's not accepting the help and then complaining about it. He's saying that, we kind of forgot about the fact that, I said that I need you guys. Like, 12 to 15,000 people didn't show up to his first game, and then he lost to Bellarmine. Like, we tried to help, dude. We tried. We were the people that put you in this position. Fans, I personally didn't. I don't know if you did, Jake. I wasn't exactly clamoring for Kenny Payne, but there was a large faction of the fan base that put him in this place. And 95 to 100% of those people now are understanding and have resided to the fact that Kenny is not the fit, right? But the reason he has this job, the reason he's going to have a $7-8 million buyout, whatever he agrees to, the reason why, he's gonna go on to live a good life despite his ineptitude at the University of Louisville is the fact that the fans put him there. He basically made he made $3.25 million a year. So quick math here. If he gets his full buyout, he's going to make $13 to $14 million for winning 12 games. He basically made $1 million per win.
More than $1 million.
Think about that, Jake. He made
Dude,
more than $1 million per win, and he's complaining. He's saying that it's the fan base's fault. Like, he's just taking us all down with him. And the whole Titanic thing was perfect. That was the perfect analogy. Just absolutely quintessential Kenny Payne, right? You know, the guy that's always talking about Pookie, right? He said, "Oh, this is a quintessential Pookie outfit." Yeah, well, this is quintessential Kenny Payne press conference, right? You know, aside from saying fight 219 times over the course of 63 press conferences, he also just decides that he's he's just going to make the worst possible metaphor ever and say that I want to, you know, I told you guys that we were on the Titanic and we're going down. And I need you guys to stay with me. Like, he wants us to be the violinist sitting there playing on the Titanic as we're going down and being the complete laughing stock of college basketball over the last 2 seasons. Like, what does he think is going to happen? He doesn't even have a fucking recruit for next year, Jake. There's not one single person who wants to come to this mess. Like, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. What's your take?
Yeah, KP, I think, envisions himself as that violinist that stayed on the ship regardless of anything, and he sees fans jumping off or whatever. Kenny, you're the fucking iceberg. You were the iceberg that brought our ship down. Like, I don't understand. It's just the most bizarre commentary. And I was watching the game last night, and I was cheering for us. I still wanted us to win. Like, I was watching, and I was like, man, we're up 34-22 or whatever it was at one point when Sky Clark came out and just absolutely was on fire. So, I mean, like, I still wanted this to win. I was fine with riding this out as long as possible. And then KP goes and just makes bizarre comments, essentially blaming the fan base for why we failed and not blaming it on his ineptitude, his inability to coach, his inability to recruit, which was the one thing we thought he'd be able to do, his inability to, like, communicate what his vision is and what he is trying to change and what is changing. Like, just his inability to really do anything that a coach is asked of. So, I mean, his bizarre comments there at the end of the press conference kind of turned me off. I'm still not going to, like, completely shit on him because that's just, it's pointless. He's going to be gone. So it is what it is, but wild way to go out, unload the clip and just let everybody know how you feel as you walk off with $8 million.
At some point, you know, I don't know if it's Bozich. I don't know if it's, you know, somebody's going to get, maybe it's like Ricky L. Jones. I saw he was going to bat for Kenny on Twitter today. At some point, somebody's going to have a sit down with him. Now, I kind of quit the whole hard J journalist thing. You know, like as soon as I could get started, I was done with it because I just realized, and I think Jacob did too, at the core of who we are as a website, podcast, whatever, you know, we're fans. And covering the team, like, it's great to be able to sit courtside and watch your team. It's great to go in the press box and eat cookies. But that's not who we are. We want to be out there in the cold, freezing our dicks off, getting buzzed off Cardinal Stadium beer. We don't want to be in the press box. But if I was in that media room again, I would want to be the person. And I hope that somebody will ask it. I hope Bozich asks it. Hope somebody asks it whenever somebody's going to have to sit down with him at some point. And I want the question to be asked: do you think that the program 64 games later is better than it was when you found it? Because ultimately, that's your job. After the buyout and everything, like we said, you're going to make $1 million per win. Do you think that the program is better now than it was when you took over the program? Because he acts like he's walking everything back. You know, you go back to 5 games in. He says, no, there's no black cloud. There's no black cloud over the program. We can't have that attitude. We have to move forward. And all of a sudden, as we keep losing, the excuses just start to just pile up. You don't have any idea how bad this program is. You know, what kind of state it was in. I mean, dude, cry me a river, dude. You had every opportunity. There is no place better in the country. Like, for instance, you go to Kansas, you go to UCLA, you go to Kentucky, name another elite program, even North Carolina, and you go to their facilities, they don't hold a fucking candle, Jake, to what Louisville has. When you look at NIL, there in this day and age, nobody has positioned their program better than the 502 Circle has. Now, there might be equivalents out there, right? There could be something that's close. You know, I've heard people throw around Texas and Texas A&M and some of these other, you know, big oil company or oil, you know, money schools, you know, have great NIL collectives, and that's great. But given what Louisville is as a program, nobody's set up better. There is no better place for you to be a college basketball coach than at the University of Louisville. And that's why we're talking about Louisville poaching the best possible candidate out there, the best possible realistic candidate. Like Hurley's not coming here, Calipari's not coming here, Bill Self's not coming here. Like there's a few that just aren't on the list. But outside of that, there's a reason why this is one of the best jobs in the country. And Kenny Payne just came in and shit all over that. He just made a complete mess of it every step of the way. He fumbled in press conferences. He fumbled it on the recruiting trail. There was no plan. I mean, Brandon Huntley Hatfield came out and said there's literally no plan in place for us on defense. We just had to band together as a team and try to make it work. Like he basically, he wasn't trying to shit on his coach, but I mean, when you were questions that he was asked, he can only give a truthful, honest answer. And giving a, kind of I'd say it was pretty candid, but giving an answer that's just honest and truthful was very revealing that the team, there was no plan in place to succeed. Like they didn't go out on the court every single game and think they were going to win. When they won, it was like a big jubilant celebration and a huge shock. People keep bringing up the fact, and it needs to be said, he had more losses against D2 teams than he did wins on the road against anybody. Wins away from home, wouldn't say neutral site wins. One win, and it was a shocking upset over Miami. Like completely just derailed their season. Like Miami was a quality team, and it was just a bizarre thing where Mike James came out and scored 18 points in the first 5 minutes, and kind of like how Sky Clark was against NC State. So when they won, when they were successful, it was in spite of what the coaching staff was doing, not because of what Kenny Payne was doing. Now there are outliers. Like I don't want to complete like you said, Jake. There were things that were good. Like I think that Brandon Huntley Hatfield is the perfect example, the quintessential, if you will, that'll be the word of the day, the quintessential example of what Kenny Payne can do. And I think that's great. I think that's his place in college basketball. Like clearly he excels in certain areas. And one of those is getting kids to buy in and develop their game and realize their full potential as a player. And I think that Brandon is a perfect example of that. El Ellis went off last year because, he was really the only option, but he went off. Like he became a really quality player given the circumstances. So there were examples of players improving. I think Caleb Glenn has improved tremendously this year. But overall, there was no plan in place. The recruits were terrible. There was no organization. He gave his all. And I've heard a lot of defenders say this. Well, he really gave it all, right? Like he just really put it all out there. That is so far removed from reality. He did not give it all. Like, I'm sorry. Like Crawford came out and said, well, he feels bad. Okay. Like what has he done to change that? There have been no actions. There have been no actionable items this entire time to show that he actually truly tried to change his ways or change anything within the program. He just kept doing the same things over and over and over again. And to me, like that doesn't make me want to stand up for the guy. That doesn't make me want to defend him in any way. I'm just glad it's over.
Prez, breaking news. The University of Louisville has come out and made it official. Press release from Zach Greenwell. The University of Louisville has informed Kenny Payne he will not return next season as men's basketball head coach. Director of Athletics Josh Hurd announced Wednesday. Hurd will be available to members of the media this afternoon.
Let's go,
Breaking
baby.
news, it is official. I think it's the least surprising news of the day, but it is nice to finally see it in writing.
Immediate reaction. What are your thoughts here? What is your feeling right now? I feel the air is fresher.
Yeah, I think it's hard. It's hard to truly have it's hard to truly have a authentic reaction because we've known that it's coming for sure for the last few weeks, months. We knew it should have happened back in December. So it's nice to finally see it happen, but it's not surprise, it's not shock or anything like that. It's just nice that we have officially done this and we can now officially turn to full coaching search season.
We are officially on in the next chapter. It feels good. And I had a suspicion we were going to come on and this was going to happen. So I think we timed it perfectly. I think this is great. I'm just, man, I feel like a weight has been lifted. Because look, Jake, there's part of this as well. Like you got to consider, and I've said as much over the course of the last year or so on social media, in our writing, whatever, try to convey how I feel about Louisville basketball. Look, I know that a lot of people aren't in the position to do so, and I don't blame them for not attending games or anything like that. I travel a lot, right? In over the last, let's say, in a 15-day span, I slept in my own bed 2 nights, 3 nights, and 2 of those nights, right before I went to bed, I was at a Louisville basketball game. Okay, I went to 27 games over Kenny Payne's tenure. I watched every second of every single game that I possibly could to just flat out insult people that spend their hard-earned money, that skip vacations, that don't get the nicer car, that don't that make sacrifices, financial sacrifices, time sacrifices. If you have kids, you got to figure out, am I going to spend the money to take my kids to this game? Am I going to put them in, get a babysitter or put them in daycare or whatever the situation is? Am I really going to pay the money to park? Am I really going to spend all the time to go down to a game to actually watch this? Am I going to spend 2 hours putting it on my TV and watching this product, right? Like, it doesn't have to be going to the games. Am I going to spend my time and energy, you know, uh, towards something so patently negative, something so clearly going in the wrong direction? And then for Kenny to come out and say, well, I didn't have the support. I mean, it's just so removed from reality. It's just so, it's hard to even put into words just how just unaware he is. And to finally just see that it's over, I just feel good, man. Like, and I think too about, we took the kids to a couple of games towards the end of the season. This last game against, who do we play? Boston College. We had the 6-year-old wanted cotton candy and the 9-year-old wanted ice cream or whatever it was. And so I'm spending time out in the, normally I'm just like running down to the bar, grabbing a drink and coming back. And so I'm actually spending time walking around, seeing what it's like for a vendor, for instance. Like, you can just walk up and buy something. Like, there's people just sitting there on their phones, like just buying time until next season, right? That's pathetic. Like, you're walking down these halls and it's cavernous, it's empty. Like, if you talk, somebody all the way down on the other side of the arena when you're in the lobby area can hear you. Like, that doesn't make any sense. That's not Louisville basketball. Louisville basketball is waiting in line the entirety of halftime just to take a piss. This is not in any way, shape, or form Louisville basketball. Louisville basketball is going to O'Shea's 2.5 hours before the game, and there's drink specials, and there's a barbecue sandwich station, and bartenders are going crazy just trying to get drink orders in and all of that stuff. And it's a cultural phenomenon. This is what we spend our time and money on. This is what we make our sacrifices to do, is to go to Louisville games and to see it in this state. This is nothing that I ever thought that I would see. And the fact that 6,000 people even showed up to the Boston College game just shows how hungry we are for this. The fact that I get on a space or ESPN Louisville Plus or whatever that they have going now, which are doing a great job, by the way. 2,500 people there watching at 11:30 at night. Like, just think about just the passion and the hunger for just winning that we have. And for somebody to come out and just shit on us and treat us like that, that's just absolutely asinine, Jake. It's asinine, is what it is. To say he didn't have a fair chance, it's just absolutely shitting on everything that was provided for him. And to just go down swinging like that with your back up against the wall, to not have any sort of humility or trace of leadership, it is just beyond words. It's brutal. It is absolutely brutal.
Yeah, I think
So go ahead.
I went to 3 games this year. I think it was 3 games this year. You went to a lot more than I'm in Bowling Green, so I'm a little bit further away. It's hard to make it up, and nor was there really much incentive to go watch us lose by 20 at home to Syracuse or whoever it was going to be. You going to 17 games and to the rest of the few thousand people that went to every home game, you deserve an accolade that says I survived Kenny Payne and a psych evaluation. Like, truly so impressive that there are still
get on the
thousands.
line. Better help.
What'd you say?
I said we need to get better help on the line. Let's go.
Dude, I mean, it's truly impressive, though. I mean, still to have 6,000 people coming after 12 wins in 60 plus tries. So, I mean, to blame it on the fans is disingenuous. I mean, lacks accountability. I mean, just It's really, really frustrating to have him go out like that. And we've seen it all year long. He hasn't blamed the fans nearly as much, but he's blamed the situation, the black cloud, the kids that he has. It's never really been him taking accountability. And he's going down with the ship, still not taking accountability. And it's frustrating because fans were excited. Fans were hundreds, maybe even 1,000 people came to his introductory press conference. And fans were, I mean, I know that there were some people questioning the hire, but fans were willing to back him until we go and lose to Lenore Ryan 57-47 in the first time that we've ever seen him coach a basketball game. From then on, that would have been a fireable offense right there. And to sit here for 2 more years and continue to see no progression, kids getting added, kids getting kicked off, blaming kids because they're not wearing the right tights, saying coaches tricked us when they played the most elementary 2-3 zone a human has ever seen. I mean, the hits just kept on coming. So it's frustrating, but like you said, I am relieved. There is positivity to come. It will be exciting to see who our next coach is, who he keeps on this roster, who gets out of the transfer portal, maybe some high 4-star recruits that decide to decommit, anything like that. So exciting things to come.
Absolutely, man. And hey, we're going to throw it to break. On the other side, we're going to have the one and only Jacob Blaine. He has been diving into the transfer portal and just seeing what options are already out there, because there are players that are already out there that could absolutely be part of this program rebuild. And I'm hesitant to even say rebuild, right? A lot of people are already coming at us and saying, oh, well, the next coach shouldn't be expected to go to the tournament. Bullshit, Jake. Like, I'm just calling BS on that. We could name 12, 15, 20 examples of high-level programs hiring a coach and that coach coming in right away and being successful. Even mid-level coach, like South Florida. Like, there have been plenty of examples of coaches coming in right away. The expectation, the standard is the standard, right? The standard is they need to make the tournament next year. Tournament or bust. I don't, I understand people's thoughts of, let's give the next coach a couple of years, let's not run them out of town or whatever. That nobody, I can guarantee you right now, right? Sitting in this spot right now, Jake, we're going to hire a coach with coaching experience. We're going to hire a coach that will work with the 502 circle, that'll be able to offer that NIL money. We will not make the same mistake again. There is no excuse, zero excuse to not live up to that standard next year. 18, 20 wins, 22 wins is the bare minimum next season. I don't care what anybody else has to come out and say about that, where you can come in and win now. And this is how I started, right? The foundation is already in place. We already have the NIL money. We are willing to pay a coach whatever it takes to meet or exceed whatever his market value is. And we're going to give him all of the resources to make this his own program. I hesitate to even say it's a rebuild. I would say that it's just the next wave. It's the next era. And so we'll get into that more as we move into the offseason, look into what's the feasibility of Scott Drew, what's the feasibility of Dusty May, or some of these other names that we're hearing. And look, as you suggested, Jake, I think that the coaches that we said could have been, questionable to hire because of their stuff outside of basketball. Those guys are not on Louisville's radar from everything that we're hearing. And so with that in mind, even if it's a Mick Cronin, even if it's some of these names that have been, wishy-washy, we're going to get behind those guys. We're going to support them. We're going to have a packed arena to start next season. We're going to have, many more eyes on the television. This is a fan base that's hungry. We're going to give them that support. We're going to be all the way behind whatever Josh Hurd, and not just Josh Hurd, the entire Louisville administration, whatever his name is, Sugar Mama or whatever, that's going to come in and Kurt Sugiyama is his name, I believe, or Kurt, something like that. Glenn Sugiyama is going to come in and help Louisville through this process, or whoever it is that they choose. So exciting times ahead. On the other side, we're going to talk to Jacob Blaine about his opinion and what exactly Louisville's looking at in the transfer portal, and where we as fans should be looking for the future of Louisville basketball. On the other side, on the Starting 502 podcast, powered by the State of Louisville Podcast Network, and brought to you, as always, by the one and only Mr. and Mrs. Bourbon. Be right back. Mr. and Mrs. is for everyone, from a more traditional 90 proof to a cask strength that's smoother than 2013 Russ going to the hole, and boy, could we use that right now. Mr. and Mrs. Bourbon covers tastes, all different taste of preferences, 6 different bourbons that they're offering. Be among the first to try Mr. and Mrs. Bourbon, the official bourbon of the state of Louisville, and the Starting 502 Podcast, on shelves anywhere you find your liquor, and now online at mrandmrsbourbon.com. We are back, and we have a special guest this evening, afternoon, whatever time of day it is. Jacob Lane. Jacob, how are we doing? You're reacting live with us as Kenny Payne is literally followed by a WLKY helicopter. We are truly, as Mike Rutherford said, an insane place. We are mentally ill, as Jake said. I was talking about, I went to 27 games over the KP era. So we're gonna this is our pitch to BetterHelp. Yes. He said that I need to get some help.
Yeah.
But let's hear what's your live reaction. Is there a weight lifted off your shoulders? How are you feeling?
I'm trying to think of a good analogy here of like when you know something is going to happen and then it like finally happens and you're relieved. Okay, this is probably not a great analogy. My wife's going to kill me. But when we had our first child, right, we knew we're going to have our child. We had a scheduled C-section. We knew the date. We knew the time. We knew it was coming, right? We knew exactly what was going to happen, what the process was going to be like. Doctors were very prescriptive over what was going to happen. But we had to wait until, 4 or 5 days later, right? So for the last few days, we've known this was coming. We've been excited for this day coming, but we still kind of have had dread about when will it happen, how will it happen. It's kind of similar. And then ultimately, once the baby is birthed, which in this case, that's obviously not what Kenny fired, but then you feel this sense of like joy and relief and excitement and like all of the stuff that you worried about. There was no reason to have worried about it because you're at the moment that you waited for. And that's kind of how I feel. That's not probably a great analogy. That's why I'm not a journalist. But that's how I feel. And so I'm just glad that finally the administration kind of did what they had to do. And wherever this shakes out from a financial standpoint, whatever that means, that's great because we'll figure it out later. At this point, you're at the most crucial juncture as a program because you are very quickly on the verge of becoming a Tennessee football for all of those years following Philip Fulmer leaving, right? When they hired Derek Dooley and then hired Jeremy Pruitt and then hired, all these crap coaches, Butch Davis, like that's what it felt like Louisville was on the verge of. And so for me, I'm hoping that we're going to land upon the right gentleman to coach the program and lead the program. And like Jake talked about last week, getting that guy that's going to be here for 20 years, like that next Rick Pitino, that next Denny Crum. I'm just really excited for that process to finally all like begin truly right now.
One more thing before we get into recruiting. I kind of went into this a little bit. I've said that the standard is the standard, right? That postseason is the expectation next year. 20 wins is the expectation. And we got a lot of, pushback on that. But I disagree. If this was 2013 even, this was 2015 or 2008, whatever. Like, I think that it's different. But this is a different day and age. You can rebuild. I keep saying rebuild. You can make this what you want immediately. You can turn this into what I don't even want to say turn it into what it needs to be because it already is what it is. You just have to have a coach come in that's cohesive with Louisville's vision and Louisville's plan, period. I mean, do you agree with that? Or do you think that they need like a bridge/gap year?
No, I mean, I guess it really just depends on like who ends up coming in as the head coach and what remains of the roster. Jake and I talked weeks ago about like the portal was going to be like the recruiting of the portal was going to be an equally important part of the coach that you hire because you have the chance to get in and flip a team year over year and develop into a top 15 team. I mean, shit, look at Utah State, man. They're the perfect example of what you can do through the portal. Danny Sprinkle is the man. Like, I don't think he's a candidate for this job, but to go from having no players returning on your roster to being a top 25 team, likely going to win what is one of the most competitive conferences in college basketball. The Mountain West is better than the ACC, that like top to bottom, just to be quite honest with you. Like that's what Louisville needs. And so if you do get a Scott Drew, say you do get an Eric Musselman, I feel pretty confident that you can flip the roster really quickly. However, like a guy like Dusty May, I'm not as confident that they could come in and produce a a highly ranked team with the guys that say you're just left with like a Brandon Huntley Hatfield and a Caleb Glenn and Kurt Williams. Say those are the three that are left. I don't think they can build as quickly with a guy like Dusty May because he hasn't utilized the portal. He's only gotten a handful of guys in his tenure there at Florida Atlantic. A lot of that is probably resource based and just the overall experience. But still, that's something that you need is to be able to flip a roster and get recruits through the portal. He's one I would be curious of what that looks like. But yeah, no, I think next year at a minimum you need to be a fringe tournament team. Like 20 wins. Wake Forest has 20 wins. Like you can be Wake Forest next season, Clemson has 20 wins. You could be that. Pittsburgh almost has 20 wins. So yeah, I expect that year one, you go out, you should be able to hire a coach that can produce those results.
I mean, that to put it in perspective, the NC State team that Louisville led at halftime yesterday, even after all of this mess, even after everything that's happened, Louisville lost by 6 to them at home, I believe, and then kept it close, I guess, in the ACC tournament, right? So to put it in perspective, that's a 18-win team right now. Like that's a team that they're probably not going to make the tournament, but they're pretty damn close. And nobody's out here saying that's like a quality squad, right? Like they have solid players. They have a coach that has a plan in place, but they're not. You can be better than that. Like, and that's that's what we're asking for. We're not saying for Rick Bozich to come out and say, well, the expectation this season was 12 wins. Maybe your expectation was 12 wins. That was not my expectation. My expectation was, okay, you said you're bringing in Trenton Flowers and Dennis Evans, and I get a lot of that didn't work out, but that's what you're pitching to us, right? You're pitching to us that this season will be completely different. And then it comes out and it's not at all. You lose another exhibition game. You're losing to Arkansas State by 20. You're losing at DePaul, the most god-awful team in the country. Like, there is 12 wins was not the expectation. And
no,
anybody who says that, like I said about Kenny Payne, you missed my Kenny Payne rant, Jacob. It's not steeped in reality whatsoever. It's just it's false. It's just completely wrong.
Yeah.
Jake, I want to get Jake's opinion on this real fast because I kind of just like, we're pushing through to get Jacob on and squeeze all this in as we're reacting live. Jake, what is your take as far as, do you think that the standard should be in place next season that it's kind of tournament or bust?
Yeah, I mean, it's always a standard. No matter if Kenny Payne did this for 5 years, the next head coach that came in, I'd still expect 20 wins, fringe NCAA tournament, because we've seen that it can be done so easily, whether it's at South Florida this year or whether it was Kansas State last year. Like it's so ignorant of Kenny Payne to come out and say it's a 3 to 4 year rebuild because it's not. We're not in 1992 anymore. That's not what it is. It's so feasible. It's so easy to be done. So, I mean, yes, 100%. I'm not coming in with any other expectations for whoever the coach is. It's 20 wins. It's bubble. It's making the tournament. It has to be me watching this whole entire season and never giving up. Me watching this season and watching Virginia play and being like, oh, we could see them as like a 12-5 matchup or like an 11-6 matchup. Like it's watching other games being like, oh, we could see them in the tournament. That's what it needs to be. And if I don't feel that in year one, I'm going to start to have questions. Probably less questions than I did after a 4-win season with Kenny Payne, but I'm still going to have those questions regardless who it is. If it's Kenny Payne, if it's TJ Otzelberger, if it's Jerome Tang, if it's Jamie Dixon, whoever it is, they're still going to have to uphold the standard that is Louisville basketball. It doesn't have to be Sweet 16s in year one, but it needs to be competitive play. It needs to be near 20 wins.
So as we're moving into this conversation about players, we talked a lot about coaches, and we will continue to do so in the coming weeks. And as things change, we're going to get on here. We'll talk about it. Those will be the conversations going forward. But we need to talk about the feasibility of landing players in the transfer portal, something that has kind of, now as the season's coming to an end, I promise you, now that the word is dropped, that the official word is out there, that Kenny Payne's gone, the school's put out a statement, everything that goes along with that, you're going to see players immediately entering the portal. I promise you 100% there will be players on this team that are going to be poached by other quality squads. 100% that is going to happen. It will happen soon. Before the next time that you hear from us, I can almost guarantee you that there will be players that are in the portal.
Dude, so, to be quite honest with you, I thought Louisville, and I'm not going to say who, but I thought Louisville was going to have a situation last night where the game is over and immediately you have one player in the portal. Like, yes. I'm shocked it didn't happen. I wasn't like expecting necessarily like if it didn't happen, whatever, but like every year you see like Javon Porter from Pepperdine. People are talking about him in the portal. The dude was in the portal before the game was over. Like that to me was what I was expecting almost from a couple of these guys.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's something to be said about the school, the way things are handled, and the players' kind of respect for the program and what it is for players not to leave. The fact that everybody showed up in Washington, D.C. and played a basketball game, that's great in and of itself. But yeah, no, I mean, you're going to see guys leave, like 100%. We won't, we'll let players have their moments, but there are guys already out there that we know for a fact that they're going to be gone. And so with that in mind, Jacob, when we're assessing this roster, when we're looking at players to build upon, what are the types of players that you're looking at right away? Are you looking at grad transfers? Are you looking at guys that had a quality freshman season and they can come in and contribute right away? Like what is the standard of player that you're looking for? The type of player that you're wanting to build around?
Winners. That's what I want. I want winners. I want players coming from winning teams, even if it's mid majors, low majors. I don't really care at this point. I want guys that contribute to winning, that want to win, that don't have to be reminded to fight. Like, I mean, come on, I get it's a joke, but like somebody retweeted the video and was like, I mean, that's a lot of times for the players to not listen to that. And it's true, right? Like you need players that will handle coaching and who are not bigger than themselves or bigger than the program, like who understand the significance of what this place is and what it can be. So that's the first and foremost. Like that's where I start. But I think a lot of it really depends on what you bring back. I think that you start to kind of look at how you could build this team. And from today, I think you could build this team inside out with Brandon Huntley Hatfield being your star. I think if he doesn't go pro, I think he'll be back. I don't think he'll transfer. I think he will stay. My worst nightmare, though, and I hate to even speak this into existence, I was talking to my buddy about this the other night. My worst nightmare is that Kenny Payne ends up at Kentucky as an assistant for a second tenure and Brandon Huntley Hatfield goes to Kentucky. I'm really hoping that doesn't happen. But if Kenny doesn't coach in college basketball next season, I think a lot of these guys that were Kenny guys will stay. I really do. Sky Clark being one of them. So if you're building around Brandon Huntley Hatfield, what you need is a really good point guard. Like you need somebody that's like Tyler Johnson, but more experienced, proven winner, doesn't take plays off, doesn't spend half of his time defensively trying to get the reach around steals, like a sound, disciplined Peyton Siva-esque culture building type player. They didn't necessarily have to have the skill level of Peyton Siva. I'll settle for a Kristen Cunningham type guard, but you need that, right? You need somebody that can be the extension of the coach. And then around them, man, the one thing that's really plagued Louisville the last 2 seasons and really into Mac's last 2 years was shooting. They need shooters. They've got to go out and get a guy like a Jacob Meyer from Coastal Carolina. We'll talk about some of these names briefly, I'd imagine, but somebody like that. They need a 40% shooter. They need an Andrew Taylor from Mississippi State. They need somebody who can come in and can hit a corner three, can hit a three on the move. They need defenders. They need length. They desperately need more rebounding. They need a couple of big men. I mean, really, they need all of it, to be quite honest with you, Presley. But I think the biggest thing is you need proven winners and guys that the coach feels that he can coach and get the most out of them. And if they do that, I think they'll be in a good spot.
I liked what, it kind of goes in line with what you said, right, Jacob? And this is a guy that doesn't just talk the talk. Like he walks the walk, right? Not to be, not to use a vague term like that, but Brandon Huntley Hatfield is a guy that you saw, especially around the time of that Kentucky game, you saw that his demeanor started to change as a player. Like he started taking this very seriously in a way that he led by example. Like if there's one thing positive you can say, and Jake and I got in this a little bit, it's the fact that Kenny really helped Brandon come into his own. I mean, Tennessee did not want that kid back. He was, I don't know if he was forced out, but fans wanted nothing to do with that guy going into the following season when Brandon Huntley Hatfield left. He came in and was just okay a season ago, but we saw the potential. And this season, he's been one of the best players in the ACC. He's not going to get credit for that because of the outcomes for Louisville, but that's a guy that you can absolutely build around. I think that culturally, he's the best fit on this team. I think culturally, I think there's 3 guys really that were fits on this team. I think that Brandon, Caleb, maybe to an extent, Mike James, but Mike James towards the end of the season, a lot of the positives that we saw out of him and a lot of what Kenny kept preaching about Mike James, it was not he was not the same player, and I think that his head was somewhere else. I think that's a guy that you see and end up leaving, in my opinion, based on his play and his comments after the game last night. But I think that Caleb, Brandon, and then Zan Payne, who obviously probably won't be back next season. I don't know if he has a seventh season out there.
Kenny's got to keep his mole in town, man. He might get his 7th year.
He you know what? I would take it. I would take it because at least you have a guy.
Stop it.
You have a guy that's at least trying.
Yeah,
he at least tried for as much
Hey, look,
as we wanted it. We gave Zan. Yeah,
the bad man can't hurt you anymore. He's gone. Okay,
you
don't have to worry about that.
And that's the thing. I'm letting all these people just kind of sway my opinion a little bit. But I mean, the fact is, at least you had guys that culturally fit. And I think that Brandon and Caleb are two guys that do. And you didn't see consistency out of any of the other players. You really didn't. Jake, I'll go to you real fast as well. What kind of players are you looking for? And it's going to be in the portal, in my opinion. There's a couple guys out there still kind of haven't made a decision for next season, but ultimately the bulk of this is going to be from the portal. So that's what we'll talk about. What do you think in the way of what Louisville is looking for in the portal?
I think everything y'all said's true. The biggest thing I want to focus on is aging up via the portal, which is something that Kenny Payne never seemed to quite grasp in his 2 years here. In his first year, he only got Brandon Huntley-Hatfield out of the portal, and he was coming off his freshman year at Tennessee. In
Sky
year
Clark,
2,
but I don't think you count Sky Clark, really. He only played 13.
Yeah, well, yeah, and even in year 2, he adds Trey White, Sky Clark, Danilo Jovanovic, but they're all guys that just came off their freshman year. Right. So, not only did he not add enough talent via the transfer portal, he also added really young and a lot of times unproven guys, and guys like Sky Clark that only played 13 games, or Brandon Huntley-Hatfield that I think started less than 10 games at Tennessee, or Danilo Jovanovic, who redshirted his freshman year. So there's plenty of talent out there in the portal, but I think it's also really important to be able to get older, because you can't go and bring in 12, 19-year-olds, and especially if none of them have had success at the college level, you can't expect that to work out well. And that's one thing that Kenny struggled with really badly. And I think bringing in 4 to 5 grad transfers or guys that are juniors or seniors is going to be really big to be able to build a culture that whoever the next coach is wants, and to be able to have a successful team in year 1 like we want.
Well, here's an interesting thing. So let's just say for a second the head coach is Scott Drew. Jake, you and I talked about this. He takes a very different approach to building a roster. It's really the ideal approach. It's a combination of 5 stars who can come in and be your leading scorer year 1, right? And then it's bringing in developmental recruits, guys that are at the JUCO level who have those intangibles, right? Yevs Missy is their center this year. He's going to end up being probably a top 20 pick. Nobody had heard of them at this time last year. Then you have the transfers, right? They went out, they got Jaden Nunn from VCU. They brought in, his name is Ray J. Dennis from Toledo. They also had a couple of transfers that they brought in from other schools over the last couple of years. And so that's the thing about Scott Drew, is that he does a good job of that. But what I'm getting to is that, say Scott Drew does come to Louisville, I would like to think that the 4 recruits that are committed to him would follow. That means that Louisville won't be, it depends again on what goes out the door, but assume that these guys come in. You're talking about bringing in a top 5 player in VJ Edgecombe, I think is how you say his last name, from New York, who will be a top 5 pick in the 2025 draft, right? And this is coming off of last year. They had Keontae George, who is now the Utah Jazz's up and coming star, just dropped 40 3 nights ago as a 19-year-old rookie. They've done this year to an extent with Langston Love off of the bench. So these guys, they come in and they produce a lot of numbers. But then you have Jason Asamoah, who is another top 25 small forward, and Rob Wright, who is a 4-star point guard from Philadelphia. And then you have a really interesting 7-foot forward from the JUCO level out of McCook College. McCook Community. Oh my gosh, man, I can't get this one out. McCook Community College. Okay, I finally got it. 7
You smell toast? Are you smelling burnt toast? You having a stroke over there?
Yeah, nice stroke, Pam. But Noah Boyd is his name. So that's 4 really interesting recruits that you would think probably might follow Scott Drew. So then you're talking about, you've kind of got these really, really young guys, and it's really these 4 or 5 key positions where you need to age up, as you're talking about, and you can go out and get a star point guard, go out and get a star big man, get you a 5-year journeyman rebounder who can give you 5 good fouls. I think that's like the recipe for building real quickly. But again, right, just to kind of talk about guys coming in, you look at Florida Atlantic, their recruiting class is 3 3-star players: Lorenzo Case and Elijah Elliott and Ty Robinson, from 2 from Florida and 1 from Arkansas. So like those guys you can't really bring with you if you're Dusty May. So it's all of this is really going to dictate. Like we really can't even get into an in-depth report like portal conversation yet, because we don't know what's the makeup, what's the ideal, kind of roster outlook for the head coach. Because if you're Scott Drew, you can bring all these star freshmen, build your way. These guys have familiarity with you. Or if you're Dusty May, you got to probably go out and recruit brand new guys, bring in portal guys, things like that. So it's going to be interesting.
It's, I got a little distracted here. Somebody posted a picture of Dua Lipa at Louisville's practice facility. I don't know if she has a concert going on or something, but clearly the coaching search is going very well. We got Dua Lipa here.
I would take Dua Lipa over Kenny Payne. I just want to put that out there.
I did a quick Google search because I didn't see, somebody posted an Instagram shot. I looked at her story and everything, didn't see anything. But I did Google like Dua Lipa Louisville, and there were like 7 people that commented on Drew Dinner's thing that said, I have a better shot at landing Dua Lipa than Louisville does at landing Scott Drew. So that I went ahead and bookmarked all those just in case. But no, anyways, yeah, it's hard to put specific names out there because we're so early in the portal, and really, like you said, Jacob, and like Jake said as well, what we're looking for is winners. We're looking for guys that are coming from winning programs, winning teams that maybe weren't good fits, or they're looking to make some more dough, or whatever the case might be. A lot goes on in that transfer portal. So it'll be fascinating to watch as we go on. Any final comments on what we're looking for? As far as the next coach, new players, as we get out of here, we kind of have a hard out here in like 3 minutes. Any other final thoughts from either of you?
I guess I'll just say that if you look at, I think this may be a very obvious statement, your path to success increases tenfold if you hire Scott Drew, not only for all the reasons you all have talked about, but when you talk about bringing in your players, and this 2-time transfer rule really is going to be interesting with the portal this season. But Scott Drew has a lot of guys that are not NBA ready that could come with him to Louisville. That would be instant playmakers. You're talking about guys in Langston Love, who I mentioned was a really highly rated recruit. Josh Elijahwana. Those names aren't like sexy college basketball names, but these are guys who are playing a very key role for Baylor right now. And if he was able to bring over a guy like Jaden Nunn or Ray J. Dennis, like that's a game changer. So that's the thing for me, Scott Drew. And then it is a massive fall to whoever candidate number 2 is. Scott Drew will make Louisville relevant to the point of next season they could be national championship contenders. I believe that with everything in me. I know that sounds crazy sitting here with the coach fired 15 minutes ago.
Not crazy.
That's where I'm at with Scott Drew, man.
No,
Throw him a bag.
That's the reality of modern college basketball. That's where we stand. And the thing is too, you look at, it's like you build it and they will come type of thing, right? Like you get a Scott Drew type of name coming in. I mean, God forbid, we talk about Billy Donovan or any of these other names that have been thrown around as well. You get that type of name coming in. Number 1, you're selling tickets. Number 2, you're getting awesome recruits coming in. Number 3, the money will be there, right? Yeah. So we talked about, Louisville doesn't, which is true. It's that this is the reality of the situation when you fire, 5 high level coaches in the last 10 years or whatever it's been over the course of the last few years in football, basketball, you name it. When you're paying all these buyouts and dealing with what Louisville's had to deal with over the last decade plus, if you're trying to hire a Dusty May, then I mean Louisville has Dusty May money, but if you're trying to bring in a Scott Drew, it's a lot easier to talk to boosters and sponsors and that kind of stuff when you're talking NIL. So Jake, any final comments?
If I'm not a religious man, but if we land Scott Drew, I will change my religious affiliations to the Church of Drew. Like 100%, whatever it takes to get him, I will make that promise. I will do anything. Like you said, he's a game changer. He's a program changer. In year one, I'd be expecting a Elite Eight Final Four if you get him at the helm.
Jay Cook, a member of the Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints or whatever it is. Anyways, guys, we will get into this a lot more. I mean, as we're sitting here, a lot's unfolding. So we'll be back on the horn sooner rather than later. Make sure you drink your Mr. and Mrs. Bourbon. Make sure you click that subscribe button as well. Follow us on YouTube, Spotify, SoundCloud, wherever you get your podcast. We're there. Starting 502 Podcast. Until next time, let's get out of here and go Cards.